very happy to start our 10th webinar, International Dialogue on English Language Teaching. We would like to greet you and our traditional team, Ferit Kilichkaya and me. We would like to remind you that our initiative is a cooperation of Mehmet Ersoy University in Burdur and Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. So it's like international cooperation to support international dialogue. Our webinars are recorded, so you can watch them. Of course, we recommend subscribing our YouTube channel. For today, we have extra surprise for you because we have 4 great guests who will share.
So, Joanna, are you there? I think there is a problem with the connection.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you, right? Okay.
Okay, so I will repeat all. So let's welcome all of our participants and of course our great speakers coming from 4 different countries. Which countries are there? You will know in a minute, and of course you know from our poster. We are greeting you, Ferit Kilichkaya and Joanna Kitskas. Our initiative is a common initiative of Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań and Ersoy Mehmet Akif University in Burdur, Turkey. So in this international initiative, we support international dialogue. We'll start with our first guest, who is Adegboye ADEYANJU. I'm sorry for my pronunciation, but I hope that you will correct me. And a few words about our first guest, who is connecting with us.
Again, Joanna, we lost your voice again. Yeah, could you please repeat the last?
Yes, I was saying that Adi, our first guest, has a rich and versatile experience. And since 2007, his teaching staff at university at Abuja, Nigeria. His teaching areas are discourse analysis, general linguistics, English linguistics, English phonetics and phonology, psycholinguistics, modern English grammar. His research areas are applied linguistics, critical discourse analysis, systemic functional grammar, genre, and register theory. So let's welcome our first guest, and the floor is yours.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is the webinar and these are the speakers and I'm the second, okay? And first of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to join the panel for this 10th INDELT webinar. And I'm going to be speaking about English in France. So this is my personal viewpoint as a semi-retired teacher in France. And I'm going to stay, I think I started at 10 past, so I'm going to try and do this very quickly. This is the outline. We were asked to describe the context and situation, educational situation in our country with regard to English language teaching, to present the teaching situations we implemented during this pandemic, and some thoughts on the future. As we're still in pandemic conditions, my thoughts for the future are, I would like peace in the world, as you already said, and better bandwidth, and possibly the end of COVID. This is the context of English in France, which, as you can see, can be many things to many people. And my focus is particularly language in use. I'm a corpus linguist and I specialize in scientific communication in English, but it's also sometimes used as a lingua franca to communicate with immigrants and migrants in France, because French is quite a difficult language. This is the English Proficiency Index. It's based on freely available tests, apparently 2 million adults from 112 countries, and the order of Nigeria, France, Turkey, and Qatar is the order originally planned for the speakers, so that's quite cool. And we're going to try and beat Nigeria soon. In fact, I've just overtaken Nigeria. Part of my teaching is at AgroSup. As I said, I specialize in scientific communication. And this is a master's taught in English on food science. And there are two branches, the MP² and the P2 food. AgroSup Dijon has just changed its name and become l'Institut Agro-Dijon, which is even more difficult to say in English. And it's a higher education and research institution. AgroSup uses a learning management system. Learning management systems cost a lot of money. As you can see, I've looked up some resources there. The fees are very, very variable. AgroSup uses Blackboard. And the first time I had to teach online with Blackboard, having had a catch-up tutorial on the Saturday morning, the AgroSup website, the entire AgroSup computer system was offline, so I couldn't use Blackboard and had to do 3 or 4 free Zoom sessions. So what Ade is going through now is what is par for the course in pandemic times. This is a new course for me at the IRTES. These people are social workers, and I was asked to build an online program for them because of the pandemic. Their freelance English teachers decided that teaching online was not really their deal. So I built an online program for them using freely available tools. Here's an overview of some tools. As I said, the university uses Teams, which doesn't generally work on my computer. AgroSup uses Blackboard, which works when AgroSup is online. I have a free version of Zoom, but the IRTES had a paying version of Zoom. I've also used Skype for tutorials with doctoral students. I've used WhatsApp with migrants trying to learn French in pandemic conditions. I've not yet used Google Meet. The IRTES has Padlet, but I found it a little bit difficult to manage because I had to send things by email to the supervisor who could then put it online. So I decided to use Google Classroom for my classes with the IRTES. And there are a lot of Google tools that I use to help people learn English. And I do recommend using DeepL and Google Translate for the social workers particularly, because social work is very different from one country to another. It's even 3 different groups that I teach in France. So it's very difficult to find the ideal explanation for what they're doing in English. I also like the Macmillan Dictionary, and for catch up or going a little bit further in your own time, I've recommended Closemaster and Duolingo. Okay, I used Google Tools. Classroom is supposed to be a free one-stop shop for class organization. I put the Z in red because I'm British and I would write an S there. Google Workspace for education is apparently free. Some tools are free across all editions. So Classroom will always be free for the moment. But Google Workspace for education is becoming a learning management system, and there are options to get more storage, more security, etc., etc., etc. As I said, I recommended Closemaster and Duolingo, and these are the blurbs, the selling points of Closemaster and Duolingo. Gamified language learning is becoming a thing. Apparently, we learn better if we get points for learning, if we can beat others, etc., a competitive world. And Closemaster does have a sort of corpus approach to vocabulary and context, so it can be quite interesting. And Duolingo says that it was created so that everyone could have a chance, and it would be free language education. Since they put that up, I think they have created a premium version. But if you create if you create a Duolingo classroom, you get unlimited lives, which can be quite encouraging for students, because when you have lost all your lives, you can't practice anymore unless you buy new lives. If you get unlimited lives, it encourages you to keep going until you've finished the lesson. Some of the students have been using Duolingo and have made quite reasonable progress, but it's obviously not conversational. And that is part of the problem of online learning. I find it very, very difficult. We're experiencing it today when you're hosting a Zoom meeting or whatever tool you're using. Not everybody has sufficient bandwidth, not everybody has a microphone, not everybody has a camera, not everybody is in a quiet environment where they can speak. So it does get really, really complicated to do conversation online, I think. This is a slide of a screen capture of Google Classroom, and the IRTES students generally self-assess as quite low level English. A1, A2, B1 is the highest self-assessment I had. As social workers in France, English is not really a priority, except for basic communication with people who don't speak French, or possibly to read documents that are only published in English. And so this year I'm working more on putting English and French together so that they can compare and contrast and see whether we say the same things in English and in French. I forgot to say I'm part of a research group in Dijon, the CPTC, and I'm in the linguistics section, and it's science of language and culture, because obviously language is always grounded in culture, and therefore the things that you say to children in French are not necessarily exactly the same things as you say to children in English. My take-home message from that is that English in France, for many French people, is difficult to pronounce. And part of it is the French educational system, where there are two key notions: the zéro faute, which translates as making no faults, but in English we say making mistakes, and we don't imagine that it's possible to make no mistakes. And therefore, in English, I think the educational system encourages you to try again until you succeed. Because zéro faute is basically unachievable, it's what really young French children have as a goal for dictation when they're learning French. And so they tend to move to an easier target, which is la moyenne, which in France is the pass mark, the average, which is 10 out of 20. The problem with that is that it tends to make you focus on 50% of what you need to learn. And I think it's much better to have the goal of learning as much as possible, not setting yourself any limits. And I got the Average Joe quote from the English Corpora, which are freely available online, Mark Davis's website, that helps you see how English is used worldwide, and I think that's a really, really interesting tool. I'm getting ready to finish, and I'll talk about the pros and cons of remote teaching. On the left, which is actually on the right of the screen, I'm sorry, but it's on my left. There are no masks, no interruptions. You can divide the students into groups. You've no need to go out, no need to travel. You can be sharing your screen, and it's probably less intimidating to speak when nobody can interrupt you. But the cons are that there is no real interaction, like real life interaction, which you can sometimes get in class. There's not always a lot of participation. Students can still be intimidated. If you divide the students into groups, you have no control over the groups. So you're not, if you divide the students into groups in class, you can move from one group to the other, and you can see that, you know, they're more or less on target. If you divide them into groups, unless somebody has a better tool, I find it impossible to be in two places at once. So I have to move from group to group, which means that I lose track of what's going on in all the other groups. And the IRTES students are in really big groups. There are like sometimes 70 students, which is, you know, a lot of students to divide. Joanna will be in agreement with the lack of bandwidth, which is a major problem. I forgot to put power cuts, but Ade will agree with me that power cuts can be a major problem. Forgetting to charge up your computer, or not having the electricity to charge up your computer, so you have no computer, no sound, no camera, no microphone. And in certain areas of France, bandwidth is a major problem. So if you're teaching to students who are working from home because they're not on campus, they can be in what are called white zones in France, where there is literally no internet access. So, you know, you can create the most wonderful class online. If they can't connect, then they can't see it. You can, of course, record, but even if it's recorded, they still need to get access at some point to go over the class. I think that I've said everything. Oh, final point. There is a webinar that was on yesterday, on the 23rd, 2 days ago, about the future, growing up on Zoom, kids in the time of COVID. And I think it was recorded, which I'm very pleased about, because I wasn't able to watch it on live. But I think it's very, very good to think about what children are going through at the moment, because they are our future students. And if they've grown up being online all the time, then our remote teaching may not be quite as interesting as it was when, you know, it was cool for the teacher to show a video or something. And I think there's a very big difference between choosing distance learning because that's what you want to do, and being forced into remote teaching because that's the only thing you can do because of the virus situation. Okay, these are my references. I'm totally happy to share the PowerPoint. The references are numbered by the numbers of the slides. These are some background references, often in French and only in French, about the educational situation in France. Apparently French students are improving at English, but they still find oral communication difficult. And I think the webinar schedule is on time because we're coming up, I think we've even got 5 minutes ahead of time. I've never done that in my life, so I'm getting better and better all the time. Okay.
So thank you so much, Carmela. Okay, and by the way, some of the audience have asked about the link, the YouTube link that we shared. So if it's possible,
the YouTube link. It's actually an hour-long thing. It's on YouTube, but it's an hour-long webinar.
Okay, so maybe you can, you know, just share the link of the.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I was happy to put the PowerPoint online. I'll go back to the webinar link and pop it in the chat. Hang on. I can't, sorry.
So,
I can't do that until I leave my screen. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, okay.
As you can see,
in the meantime, I'm just checking just a second. So if Adegboye is available. Adegboye, are you there? Adegboye?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, great. Okay,
Excellent.
yeah, we can. Excellent.
Okay.
Just a second. I'm sharing your presentation. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Fine. Okay.
Okay. Thank you for having me. Carmela has done a very good job painting the scenario. I will just very quickly go into my presentation. The context is that the Nigerian system of education is divided into 3 tiers. You have the early childhood pre-primary education, and then you have the basic primary, and then junior secondary, and then you basically have the secondary education. We also have the product of all the systems now go into the university. Depending on their entry behavior, they spend either 4, 5, or 6 years for different courses. It's very important to know that we've got so many public universities in Nigeria. With nearly 200 universities. The University of Abuja, where I teach, and the experience that I'm going to share, it's one of the federally founded universities based in the Federal Capital Territory of Nigeria. It was established in 1988. Now, against this background, it is important to know that English is a Nigerian artifact. And I need to say this because it predates Nigeria as a sovereign nation. The total speech for English at the moment will be well in the excess of 100 million. And it is important also to know that youth mobility, whether academically or career-wise, will be very functional in the use of English. And it is also important to state that
sorry, Adegboye,
as well as all.
Sorry.
Yeah. So because there's a kind of buzz in the sound, I mean your voice. We cannot hear you clearly.
Yeah, the slides aren't on screen, Philip.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah. So just a second. Okay. So could you please, Adegboye, maybe you can just turn off your video if it's on. Okay.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah,
that will help.
Yeah, there is a problem with the voice. We cannot understand what you are saying. Can we do in this way? Maybe we can continue. Okay. Just a second.
Can hear you.
Yeah, we cannot. I'm sorry for interrupting again. Some of the audience are asking why cannot we see him, because he's living in Nigeria and there's a kind of problem with his internet connection. Therefore, we thought that maybe turning off the video would solve the problem. Yeah, that is the problem. And he told us that he is using the mobile phone's internet connection, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the reason.
That's very well so.
Okay, just a second. I'm trying to. Okay. Just a second, please. So again, Adegboye, could you please, check the voice again? In the meantime, I'm trying to.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear,
you hear
but
me?
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay.
Okay.
Just a second.
So I was speaking about context. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Now it's
Hello?
okay. Yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Okay. With nearly 200 universities in Nigeria and English being assured a near permanence in our national life because it's enshrined in the Constitution and several other decrees, ordinances, have already preserved English. So this is the context in which I am teaching English. We are schooled nearly all our lives in English, but The decline in the standard of English has been a reality with us also. Therefore, at the university level, we have the use of English course, which all freshmen women compulsorily take, and that is the course that I'm going to share an experience in. Shortly before the pandemic, we had a Center for Distance Learning and Continuing Education, and I was mandated to teach the use of English to distance learners. And what I deployed was what I choose to call a concatenation of technologies. I was using the screen touch computer, OneNote Windows application, Camtasia Studio application, the YouTube channel, together with the Moodle learning management system, as well as the Wiz IQ and Zoom. Those are all the things that are integrated to be able to teach the use of English. Then the pandemic happened. When the pandemic happened, fortunately for us, my university had gotten a license. We were licensed by the federal government to run an educational radio station. So we had the Excellence 98.8 FM, which I was also mandated, to use to teach the use of English. If you look at the slide, you'll see all the information that has to do with the web link and what the student, once a course is allocated by the head of the department, like the use of English, the lecturer, when the lecturer is profiled, all the students are automatically moved, and then they're able to have access to all the resources, the educational ware together with the radio. It is important to note that because of our peculiar situation in terms of bandwidth, in terms of power, many of the participants will have noticed that this is what I'm also battling with this evening. What we did was, we did not only have the physical radio, we also had the online radio. And because of that, we were broadcasting thrice a week, And how do I receive feedback? Once in a week, a phone line is thrown open and students are able to call in with specific reference to modules where they need to ask questions. And it was my duty to provide answers, to them. Now, what are the challenges that I have faced and what are the opportunities? The first one was the skepticism that many students had. Maybe because it was the very first time we're going to deploy this in my university. So the first few weeks, we had an embarrassing paucity of feedback. And what we needed to do was that we needed to be sending emails constantly. And the second thing to be able to do that was that we blocked the timing for each lecture so that no music is played, no other activities done on radio, except the radio classes. The second major problem that we had was the erratic power supply. My university does not yet run on solar. So what we had to do here was to have this repeat broadcast also to be able to provide students, at least those who will have the physical radio, and then who can also deploy their mobile radio, their mobile devices to be able to look up. What are the solutions? Like I've shared with us, that we had this fixed schedule that we were broadcasting the use of English on, and it was done thrice a week. So the more, the better, for the student to be able to assimilate. And then the second thing that we did was that we integrated this together with the provision of multimedia resources. I must confess that many students were not able to purchase this because we were able to have the CD formats. We also deployed the Google Meet, the Blue Button, together with Zoom to be able to further this. What are the benefits of the teaching that we have seen? Well, in anticipation that the pandemic may be with us For the time that we do not know, what the university has done is that the university has prepared the computer center to be able to document all the pedagogical changes that this teaching on radio has introduced and their impact, as well as to be able to monitor and evaluate the positive or negative effect of these changes. The second is that we have also seen an amazing potential that remote teaching can offer if we have the resources. I thank you so much for having me, and it's been a wonderful time, attending this webinar. Thank you. Over to you, Ferit.
Okay, so thank you so much, Adegboye. Okay, so I know that you are, trying to connect under difficult, conditions. So therefore, okay, we would like to again thank you for the presentation. Okay, Adegboye, some of the audience are asking for the slides. If it's also okay, I can share the slides or your presentation if you agree.
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to do it in a few minutes. All right. So, okay. Thank you so much again, Adegboye, for your presentation. And sorry for not, making, by the way, the slides go with your speech because, I couldn't manage that. Really sorry for that. Again, thank you. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Thanks for your great efforts.
Thank you. Okay. Now we have our next speaker, Associate Professor Mustafa Ziki ÇIRAKLI. Let me try to introduce him to you. So he holds his PhD from Middle East Technical University, Ankara, Turkey, and he specializes in narratology. He is the author of Narrative Strategies and Meaning and Narratology, Critical Readings. Furthermore, ÇIRAKLI is the translator of the Paul de Man's Allegories of Reading, Figural Language in Rousseau, Nietzsche, Rilke, and Proust. I hope I have pronounced them correctly. Okay, his translation into Turkish, Dante in Love, appeared in 2013, and his collection of aphorisms was published in 2019. He is the editor of the International Journal of Narrative and Language Studies. He is contributing to a TÜBİTAK project on corpus linguistics, and he's currently working as a group member of European Coast Action, writing Urban Places, and also he is the faculty member at Karadeniz Technical University, Turkey. Thank you so much. Mustafa Hocam.
Ferit Hocam, Joanna, and distinguished presenters and distinguished audience, thank you for having me. Thank you for including me in this nice platform. I would like to keep short my experience, and I would like to stick to the time instructions already shared by Ferit Hocam. And just let me share my screen. As I have promised, I have already promised, I will just use 2 slides. Initially, this is the title of my presentation, and I'm going to talk about loss of spatial interaction in virtual environments. That is a notion that was a significant factor in the classroom atmosphere before COVID-19. But after the COVID-19 and after the switch to virtual classroom settings, this issue became more important. And I just tried to understand how it affects the involvement of the students, the involvement of the participants in a classroom setting or classroom space. So I would like to start with a sort of graphic diagram. There are quite a few examples all through the way through internet, and you can find many other examples and many other similar diagrams. But what I try to do is to show our pulse rates. These are the pulse rates in here you see. For example, in the classroom settings, this is an investigation carried out in the United States, and when we are in a classroom setting, or when we are in a webinar, when we are passive receivers in any kind of learning medium, our pulse rate dramatically, you see, decreases. So that is an initial problem we come across in the educational settings many times. And years ago, I started to think over how we can keep our participants active and involved during the classroom sessions. And sorry. And I thought that, as many of you did earlier, like me, experientiality is very important in classroom setting, and we do not want our students to be passive receivers. Rather, they should be active. They should achieve sort of active involvement in the classroom setting. And then after the switch to virtual classroom, I tried to integrate polling, chat box, online drama, so that I could keep them involved, keep them active all through the classroom setting, even though it is a virtual setting. And I just tried to transform this virtual setting into a kind of space, learning space. My attempt and my enthusiasm to transform learning setting into learning space was due to my reliance on spatial practice. To my understanding and to my experience, and also this has a kind of a theoretical background, of course. In the classroom setting, in the learning medium, we do not have only social interaction with the individual participants or individual students or fellow students, or with our lecturers. We also have spatial practice. This spatial practice is experienced in the learning medium with the objects, but also with the bodily entities in the classroom settings. And after the COVID-19, of course, many things changed, and I tried to observe how these spatial practice would be possible in the virtual settings of the lesson. And spatial practice is important. Why? Because it has to do with our memory and episodic memory. Without having any kind of spatial practice, unfortunately, we cannot develop a sense of episodic memory. Then, even though we memorize some things temporarily, unfortunately, we cannot reconstruct them after some time in our imagination. And recollection, recalling, reconstruction becomes impossible. And if there is no recollection, recalling, and reconstruction, then there would be activated imagination, and there would be learning at all. So I just take into consideration that we should enhance such, spatial interaction. Sorry. And I observed the classroom settings, and traditionally, we know that traditional learning atmosphere, traditional education is mainly task-based as far as we are involved, and planned action. And our students, unfortunately, receivers, they are mostly passive receivers. And we can say that these ideas are mainly based upon some traditional Aristotelian perception of conception of education. In such kind of educational settings, we see that the students are externally motivated. So if there is external motivation, then, for example, grading, for example, passing the class, or for example, being clapped or acclaimed by the other people or friends, kind of, anyways. But all in all, we know that there is limited interaction, there is temporality. I mean, even though you know you learn something within a specific time, then temporarily you are prone to forget about it, and then in which case there is collectivity, and of course there is a fake belief in or insistence in transfer of knowledge. But all in all, this kind of traditional learning is based upon repetition, imitation, and memorization. And what I try to do is to change this kind of traditional setting and to transform it into spatial learning medium. And we can do it if we can involve the classroom objects, classroom settings, and also bodily entities in the classroom, and then maybe spontaneity, involvement. It is a kind of maybe post-romantic perception into how we can incorporate such, spatial entities into our learning practice or teaching practice. And then maybe we can say that it is a kind of Wordsworthian romantic idea, just keeping in mind that the possibility of wise passivity, in which case we see that our students can be internally motivated, and in such cases, maybe social and spatial interaction might be possible, reflection, creativity, and response can be possible in such spatial atmosphere. But what happened after COVID-19? After COVID-19, we are just restricted to such, screen, computer screen, and unfortunately, we are very limited with such spatial gadgets or tools. So we can see that the majority of the students are bored or bothered through the classes, and maybe the attendance rates are so low, or even though they attend the classes, unfortunately they cannot be so much activated or involved in the sessions, and the anxiety grows up and spatiality decreases. So if there is no spatiality at all, unfortunately, so they cannot create up an imagination in which they can recollect the experiential use, or they can reconstruct what they have learned or what they have experienced before. But an interesting finding I have come up, and I would like to, all in all, at the end of my presentation, I would like to share it with you. There's something strange and interesting. There are some students and who have some increased cognitive capabilities, and I saw that, for example, those who are internally motivated, those who are wise and involved in the classroom settings, can reconstruct the images or experiential images in their mind, and then maybe they can find a way to reconstruct knowledge in their mind, but as images. What about the conceptual thinking? And I observed that the students having such conceptual thinking abilities, or who are good at conceptual thinking and critical thinking, can transform their experience into a kind of set of conceptual framework. So I have come to understand that cognition conceptual thinking and knowledge might be more accessible for those who have increased cognitive capabilities. And for such students, spatial interaction can be ignored to some extent, but majority of the students, unfortunately, need such spatial interaction. And to enhance their spatial interaction, you should more actively use polling, whiteboard, chat box, and other facilities. So this kind of categorical imperative is another type of internally motivated type of learning. The details of this experience is already available in the book that would be published by Cambridge Scholars, edited by Ferit and Joanna. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for your participation.
Okay, so thank you so much, dear Dr. ÇIRAKLI. And some of the audience again are asking for the presentation file, if you agree.
Of course,
so,
it might be possible.
Yeah.
But I have only, as I have promised earlier, 3 slides, and of course,
it's okay. So
I can share it, no problem at all.
In the chat, could you please share it?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Permission.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, now we're going to have the question and answer session after Justin KERNOT's talk, okay? Because some of the audience again are asking for that information. All right, now we have the final speaker here, Justin KERNOT, and let me briefly introduce him. Justin has worked as an English language teaching trainer and manager in countries across Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa. He has been a CELTA and Delta trainer and has a keen interest in phonology, individual sounds, stress, and intonation. He's currently a lecturer of English language based in Qatar. Okay. Dear Justin, the mic is yours.
Hi, you can hear me right?
Yes, everything is perfect. Thank you.
All right, good. Well, thank you, Ferit, and thank you, Joanna, for inviting me along today. As Ferit said, I'm currently based in Qatar, and this is more of a talk through my experience of an institution here in Qatar and the transition as a result of the COVID pandemic from face-to-face to online teaching at very, very short notice. So the Community College of Qatar is basically for students who are either working or who have graduated from high school and are looking to go into tertiary education, but don't necessarily have the appropriate grades or level to move on into the government university, Qatar University. So they come to the Community College of Qatar to have some foundation programs, some foundation courses to prepare themselves and get themselves up to a level of English language proficiency that will enable them then to go on to a full degree program, either in Arabic, after a short period of English language learning, or after learning for a little bit longer to go into a degree program in English. So as I said, the students can move on to an Arabic stream after their studies with the foundation program at CCQ, or they can move to the English stream. But each level is only 8 weeks long. So usually that is face-to-face, during which time you have quite a lot of interaction, time with the students to personally kind of lead them through to the development of their language from A to B. However, on an online course, that becomes a little bit more problematic to fit so much into a very short time on an online platform. There are up to around 26 students in a class. in a physical classroom, that was pretty manageable. In a virtual classroom, it became quite a challenge, and we'll move on to the challenges shortly. One of the challenges is that we have in the college no mixed gender classes. Qatar, as I'm sure you probably know, is a Muslim country, and the classes are only for male students in the male campus, female students in the female campus. Men can teach men or women, and also women can teach men or girls. However, in an online classroom, that again presented challenges that we'll look at in a moment. The move to online teaching was literally over a couple of days. A government directive, basically from, say, from the Thursday, which is the end of the working week, said that classes would have to be given and administered online on the following Sunday, so 2 or 3 days later. So our turnaround time was extremely quick, and that presented in itself an awful lot of problems. The challenges were literally to find a platform that we could use that was easy to use. Faculty, in the end, some were very IT proficient. Students, some were also very IT proficient, others were not. So we had to find solutions to deal with the lack of skills, both on the instructor side and also on the student side. We had to ensure that teaching online, we could maintain attendance and participation, include the students, not being able to physically see whether they were there or not. They could well be online, but have disappeared off to have a cup of coffee or deal with their kids who were screaming in the background. Assessment was an issue again. How could we manage to ensure that there was no cheating or plagiarism, no matter which skill it was you're assessing? It still presented its challenges. Motivation, another factor here, was students who you have in front of you in a face-to-face classroom, you could at least see, understand, and hear what their motivation was for learning. For somebody at home, the motivation to get up in the morning, to turn on their computer, to sit there and listen to other disembodied voices without the camera was quite a challenge to maintain the motivation of the students, but also not forgetting the motivation of the teachers, because teaching online presented its own challenges to maintain motivation among the faculty. It's not so easy to sit at home and be as interested in your class and the activities as it is to be face-to-face in the classroom. The personal support, again online, proved to be slightly challenging. So training, obviously, with a new way of teaching, an online platform, we had to deliver a lot of training. Luckily, Qatar, being a very wealthy country, we had no problem with resources. We had no problem in training. We had no problem with people actually having the physical setup to deliver or to receive language training. So students all had their laptops. If they didn't, they literally would go out and buy one. So that was not an issue, nor did we have issues with connectivity or any other IT-related problems that might occur. We recorded the lessons, and MS Teams, which we used in conjunction with Blackboard and also an online version of the course books, allowed us to print off the register or keep a record of the register, which was downloadable from MS Teams, to ensure that students were attending, and with intermittent reference to each student, we could check that they were actually there by asking them to say hello. As we nominated students, we could check that everybody was there and active. we allowed students to choose some of the content of the classes to enable us to kind of deal with the motivation. If they were choosing the content, it was more likely they would be more actively involved and more willing to take part in classes online if the material was directly relevant to their own personal experiences or motivations for learning. As I said, the online availability was not a problem, although you wouldn't believe it, in some parts of Qatar, there were some connectivity issues. So there were some times where students were unable to access their online learning program because of connectivity problems. The future, I think this was the last question that we were asked to think about. We moved back to face-to-face teaching, I think a few weeks ago now. Still experiencing issues with some students contracting COVID and therefore unable to attend. So it became very much a blended learning approach. So we would have our classroom, our classes in the physical space, but at the same time, we may have a few of those students attending online. So it was quite difficult in that you had both your online students and your students attending the physical classroom at the same time. But eventually in the future, I think we're probably going to be looking at a blended learning course whereby half the time students might come into class, the other half they would go and study online with online assessments, which are now, our assessments are fully online. Even though students come into the classroom, they take their assessments online on Blackboard. It provides then and encourages more student autonomy. And I think the idea of blended learning is really to encourage that scaffolding that we give them in a classroom to be slightly taken away and give them the responsibility for their online learning element. It gives teacher a little bit more autonomy, and with an introduction of more self-directed or student-centered selection of content and project topics, it gives them more freedom, and therefore it's a less restricted syllabus, or there are less restricted syllabi. Programs will become more paperless as IT develops in this technological world. And I think the future is very much looking to, if not blended, an online approach to more paperless programs, more autonomy among students. However, having said all of that, and just to round up, I think being unprepared now means that we will be prepared for any similar eventuality in the future. We've learned a lot from the experience, and I think that is only a good thing to look forward to the development of syllabi, the development of programs, the development of the way we teach and the way our students learn. It's important, I think, whenever you have any project or any program, that you have a contingency plan or alternative plan. And I think now we've had plan A, our more traditional approach to teaching in the classroom. We've had plan B, which was our online approach, and plan C, which in the future may blend the two together. So for now, Qatar is looking forward to the World Cup, but that certainly won't be online, at least we hope not. But for us, we're back in the classroom, but we're looking forward to see how things move forward and how we introduce more online activity into our programs and our courses. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. I was thinking about what you've said Can you hear me? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I was thinking what you've said, that now we should be more flexible, not only plan A, but also B, and as you said, C. It also somehow affects us as teachers to be more flexible, to be more open as well, open-minded, I would say.
Mm.
Okay, Ferit,
Okay.
do you, yeah.
Yeah, so Justin, thank you so much for this presentation. Really appreciate that. And now we have to give a 5-minute break, okay? So for the question and answer session, and in the meantime, I'm going to deal with the certificate of participation, all right? So it requires some technical arrangement. So let's give a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and have the question and answer session. So you can type your questions in the chat box. However, since, you know, if you consider our title International Dialogue, so you might also ask your questions in person, okay? So let's give a 5-minute break, and then we're going to be together again for the question and answer session. In the meantime, if you would like to ask your questions, just, you know, you can just type them in the chat box. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Our presenters are staying with us, and we're
sure.
seeing in 5 minutes.
Okay, I think so. Yeah, we should go first with the audience who would like to ask the questions directly. So just a second, I'm checking. All right, so. Okay.
I think we have one person.
Mohammed Boisane, I think would like to ask the question. Okay. But I'll ask you to unmute yourself. Okay.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, first, thank you very much for giving us the chance, to listen to people presenting high quality, presentations from different parts of the world. And it's also amazing to listen to people's experiences and how they coped, with the distant and online education and learning. Concerning my question, in fact, there are questions. The first one is addressed to everyone, to all the participants. When we talk about online education and distant learning, we talk also about assessment. How did you manage to administer, tests and quizzes, and to ensure a high degree of validity, of the results? That is to say, to be sure that there wasn't any kind of cheating or, you got my question. This is the first one. Is also addressed to the participants, all of them. How did you opt for, different learning styles? Because when we talk about teaching students and learners, there are, of course, different learning styles. Students and learners learn differently. How did you cope, and how did you, deal with that? And the last question is addressed to the presenter from Nigeria. He talked about using radio as a medium of instruction. And he said that he was giving presentations, 3 times a week, and he was giving the students the chance to give feedback only once a week. Do you think it's enough to answer all the students' questions in one session? There is some kind of, I don't know how to say it, but I believe it's not enough to respond and to give feedback to all the students in one session. And thank you very much. Thank you very much, all of you, for your high quality, presentations. By the way, I'm Mohammed from Morocco.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Okay,
Yeah.
so regarding the assessment, so who wants to go first? As far as I understand, so Mohammed has asked, how you assessed your students, if you could, of course, during, online teaching and learning. And if you did, how did you manage that? So anybody who wants to go first?
Maybe I can start with this question. My sessions were literature sessions. Therefore, it was a bit easier for me to adapt myself to the new conditions, because I gave up years ago to apply traditional assessment tools. And I simply switched to, writing papers or developing some creative projects. Therefore, I simply kept on that kind of homeworks, that kind of paperworks. So assessment was not simply a problem in my case after switching to virtual classroom.
Okay, thank you so much. And Justin, would you like to add anything, if you wish?
When we were totally online, that was a big problem, because we were not obviously allowed to have students together in a physical classroom. So our assessments were carried out over Blackboard. So they would go in with their own Blackboard credentials, their username and password. But that meant that we didn't know, even though it was time bound, so the tests would go live at a particular time and then close at a particular time. We weren't able to know whether they were getting help, whether there was somebody supporting them. So in terms of reading and writing and grammar and vocabulary tests that were very traditional in their format, even though they're online, the knowing whether or not they were cheating or had any help was really nothing we could do about it. So we found that the results were very, very good. What a surprise. Now, fortunately, we still deliver the exams online, but now, because the COVID numbers are lower and we're able to bring the students back onto campus, they do the assessments online, but they do them on college computers, and obviously without the help of friends, family, or whoever it is that they have possibly helping them when at home. So it is a challenge, but I'm sure that there are programs that we haven't quite found yet that would hopefully solve that problem of assistance.
Okay, thank you so much, Justin. Carmela, would you like to say anything about, assessment? Yeah.
I'm fairly hostile to assessment in general, if it's possible to avoid it. And I was very lucky with the IRTES. The assessment for the IRTES was basically, I set things that could be done, and the doing was proof that you could do it. And there wasn't a sort of standard of grammatical correction or whatever, because we're in the real world, and in pandemic times particularly, my standards for the master's students writing papers about food science were obviously different from the standards for social workers, who basically need to be able to ask people who don't speak French what their first name is or what their surname is, which is in itself a really complicated question. So I think that proving that you can do it by doing it is my key to assessment, but obviously it depends on the setup that you have. If you have state-run exams, if you have, I don't know, certifications that need to be taken, then they need to be taken. But in the real world, if you can speak in English, you prove it by speaking English. If you want to write in English, you prove it by writing in English. And doing is proof for me. Okay.
Thank you so much for your responses. I'm just checking if Adegboye is available here. Just a second. Yeah, here, okay. So I'm trying to make him again the co-host, but if it's okay, of course. Just a second. Okay. All right. So now, this is how we should go, if you also agree. So I'm going to, select the questions, and then so any of you, can answer the questions. Okay. Just, it's a kind of open, response. Okay. So I think Mustafa Ziki hocam. So there was a question for you. Could you please explain the aspect related to cognition in your presentation? And I think you provided some kind of answer in the chat box.
Yeah, maybe I can elaborate on the answer I have shared in the chat box. Okay. So, and maybe I can relate this question to the last one. What about introvert students? First of all, there are some key words in my theory of post-traumatic education that I started earlier than COVID-19 pandemic. And then after the outbreak of this pandemic, I just tried to adapt, this kind of approach to the new era. Anyway, so at the heart of my approach lies, first of all, internal motivation. So internal motivation is important. So in the traditional classes, generally students are externally motivated, but internal motivation can be a problem, particularly when we switch to virtual classroom, because these students need some sort of involvement, but even the very use of screen, very use of technology is a source of anxiety. So we are dealing with, we have to figure out this problem of anxiety. We need to decrease anxiety, and we apply some exams, and then again, this might be another increasing factor of anxiety, kind of. So we should be careful enough with such, introvert students. But what is interesting is that, as I have touched upon previously, the introvert students and the students with higher cognitive skills, even shy students, can be more active in the virtual classes, and they can conceptualize the notions that we shared in the class, in the virtual sessions. But the moderate and majority of the others, unfortunately, they need not only social interaction, but also spatial interaction. They need a space in which they can construct themselves, they can construct others, they can reconstruct their memories and experience, etc. So if there is no such, spatial interaction, unfortunately, they can be involved in the sessions very temporarily, even though they deal with very short time of involvement. Unfortunately, after the sessions, they forget about and they cannot reconstruct what they have experienced in the virtual classroom. So for the case of introvert students, virtual classroom can be an advantage. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you so much for your answer. Eda Kılıç, I think, wants to ask her question in person.
Yes, hi, thank you. Thank you for the presentations, firstly. So my question is actually a bit apart from the context of the webinar. It is about the circumstances we have at this pandemic. And language education may require continuity because, every student has different learning techniques. So I'm sorry if I am pronunciating the name wrongly, but Mr. ADEYANJU, he had a connectivity problem while communicating, and based on the problems and the difficult circumstances he mentioned before, I wanted to ask all of you and Mr. ADEYANJU if you have these problems in your daily lessons, and if so, how do you take precautions in your virtual lessons?
Okay, so do you mean that, in daily, lessons, online lessons or face-to-face? I'm just confused about that. But just a second, because I need to unmute, I think, again. Eda, yes, just a second. Okay.
Yes, I meant virtual lessons.
Okay, virtual lessons.
Yes.
Right. Anybody who wants to respond to this question? When we face, technical problems, audio problems. So, for instance, I'm also teaching, online classes. The problem is that although the teachers, have to, I don't know if you have the same issue. You have to, as the teacher, you have to turn on your webcams, but the students don't have to, sometimes, I have that problem, because you cannot force the students, to turn on their webcams, and I cannot see their, gestures, faces, etc. So it's really a problem for me. Yes, Carmela. Okay.
I think we have the same problem in live classes anyway. The students can be sitting there making notes, but you've no idea whether they're listening to you, whether they're, particularly now that everybody has a phone, etc., etc., etc. You've no idea what's going on in their minds. So I think we just have to trust that we do our best to put stuff out there, and that if students are interested, they will pick up on some things, and that maybe sort of peer, not exactly peer pressure, I don't really like that, but peer emulation. They can help each other. One of the presenters talked about, I think it was Justin, different levels of online experience or expertise among students and professors. So consequently, I think that the fact that we're all in this really horrible situation, or have been in this really horrible situation, may make students keener to share with each other, to help each other, and some really cool things might happen. The one thing I do regret is that there have been fewer exchanges with other people because of the pandemic. People can't travel.
And the interesting thing is that all the time we are talking about students. So what about teachers? Teachers' wellness, I mean. So it's not easy for teachers to, speak to a microphone, and the webcams are off, and etc. So it's also a great challenge for the teacher, not just for the students. Okay, Professor Demet Yaylı would like to ask a question. Demet
Hi,
Hoca.
everyone.
Hi.
Nice to see you all in this lovely webinar. Nice to meet you all. I have a question which I posted earlier, but I'd like to, repeat it in a way or tell it myself. In some studies, I see that, researchers analyze how teachers and students view these online sessions. I mean, what kind of challenges they have, or researchers make comparisons between online and face-to-face teaching situations. And in some of these studies findings, we see that as a common conclusion, students easily, violate some of the, common rules about communication when they are online with teachers, because they don't see them in person and they are relaxed. And since, especially when the cams are off, they feel that they are all equal members, which is fine to me personally. I mean, I have never had issues like this, but there are some teachers in the literature I see who are complaining that students are not paying attention to certain barriers which have to, according to them, have to exist between teachers and students in terms of their formal interactions during the class time. I'm just curious about these presenters' opinions about this. I've never had an issue personally. I work in an ELT program and my students are all teacher candidates who are fully aware of their, codes of conduct, or I don't know, social proper behavior, let's say. But I'm curious about your opinions. I'd like to make a comment and a small question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Demet Hocam, for your question.
As it was about literature, maybe I can say, I can make some short comment. Not only in the virtual classroom, but also in live sessions, of course, we see that, the students cannot be involved in this session. So this is a problem. This is not a matter of complaint, unfortunately, to my understanding. This is a, how can I say, this is a case. Not only the students, even we cannot be involved in such a session after some time. And the critical notions here: duration of attendance, duration of attention, and duration of involvement. So that is critically shortened, dramatically shortened after the switch to modern ages and technology ages, unfortunately. And then a normal individual cannot be concentrated on an issue, remaining a passive receiver more than 5 minutes or 10 minutes. That is the case with us as well. So we shouldn't, or we cannot ask our students to be, how can I say, involved in the sessions. What we should do, or what we can do, is to transform the classroom setting or learning setting into a kind of space in which they can feel themselves relaxed, in a kind of maternal space, in which they are active, in which they are interacting with the other friends, students, and they should be at an active state. And we should also integrate this space, objects, classroom objects, or anything in the learning medium. When we come to virtual classroom session, that is a problem, because we have just, computer screens. Then we should develop some strategies to make our students involved in the session. For example, polling, or any kind of question shouldn't be a traditional question. We can just make them, how can I say, bring about some new ideas and there shouldn't be right or wrong. Just we should give them a place in which they can express themselves, or whiteboard or chat box. And of course, virtual classroom is so limited, and not only in literature sessions, in many other cases, unfortunately, the duration of attention, attendance, and involvement is so short, and we should adapt ourselves to new conditions.
Okay, Thank you so much, Mustafa Hocam. And we are running out of time, by the way. So Joanna, so it's 7:30, and so according to our time schedule, we have to end the session. Should we continue or should we end? So what do you think?
I think that it would be great to sum up everything. So if our great speakers could share with us like the last sentence about the future of the distant learning, teaching. I know that it was a part of your presentation as well, but maybe summing up.
Okay, so we lost your voice, Joanna. So we just, heard that, about just a second. So I'm just checking the response. Adegboye.
Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, but you were last time talking about, the future teaching,
Remote, and we know that there was this great idea of plan A, B, C, and one of the questions was also to elaborate more on that. We don't have time, but maybe each of the presenters could summarize and maybe share.
In a few minutes, maybe in a few. I'm sorry, in a few sentences, maybe, right?
Maybe in a few sentences, yeah. Right.
Okay. So, by the way, I'm sorry for interrupting. Some of the audience are asking for your emails. I think they want to ask, or get in touch with you. If you agree, you can type your email addresses in the chat box. All right. Just a second. Yeah, because we couldn't, answer some of the questions. So therefore, again, if you have any questions or comments, you can, directly, get in touch with our speakers. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much, Justin.
Okay. No, I just, I wanted to thank you both again, Joanna and Ferit, for this opportunity, and for everybody attending at different times. I'm sure it's 9:30 here, 9:30 p.m. It's probably very early morning somewhere else. So I appreciate that everybody's come along in their different time zones. We reacted to COVID, a lot of us, in terms of our teaching and the students learning. So I think the future really is for us to be proactive. We don't know what the future will bring, but there seems to be so many different things going on in this world at the moment that may well impact on how we learn and how we teach. So I think we need to be a step ahead of whatever might come around the corner and proactively put together different models of teaching and different ways that we can access our students and for them to access us and the materials and resources that we provide. So it's really about a proactive approach to sort of trying to mitigate the risks that the future brings and presents itself.
Thank you so much, Justin. Carmela, would you like to, share your last sentences? You are muted, by the way. Could you please unmute yourself? Okay.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm hopeful for the future because I think that seeing all these people ready to spend time, whatever time of the day it is, where they are exchanging experiences, that gives me hope. I'm worried about children because wearing masks all the time, particularly in lower school, you don't get the experience that we've had. Even the younger students at university who've spent the last 2 years, the most possibly important years of the end of adolescence in this condition, not very good. So I'm just hopeful that we'll find ways to communicate and move forward.
Thank you so much. Dr. ÇIRAKLI?
I thank you, Ferit Hocam, Joanna, for holding this nice atmosphere, making it possible to share our ideas, exchange our feelings and ideas. Nice to meet you, Carmela, Justin, Ad, and another colleague from Nigeria, and other audience. I am so happy. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, continue, please.
Thank you so much for having me. And thank you
Yes,
for bearing with me.
Adegboye, sorry. Yes, now Adegboye, excuse my pronunciation.
No, that's okay.
Nice to be with you here.
For short.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Mustafa. I'd like to thank every one of you for sharing your ideas and your thoughts. Thank you for this opportunity to share an experience with you. The future of distance learning is guaranteed. You can see that the world actually is not only fighting COVID, but we're actually thinking of post-COVID, and massive investment will be needed, particularly for the nations of the global south. There will be a need for us to be able to integrate multimedia formats for learning purposes. Thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity to share at this webinar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
All of you for your contribution and great participation. Thank you that you are with us. There is a question concerning certificates, Ferit. Could you answer once again how our participants can get them?
Yeah, okay, just a second. By the way, I shared the questions for the rest of the questions in the chat box. There are several questions directed to some of the speakers here. You can just have a look at in the meantime. And I shared again the link for the form, and the participants are asked to fill that form, and the certificates will be sent in an hour, okay, because it takes time, by the way. So thank you for your understanding. Yeah, it's going to take some time, because the system is overloaded, because let me check, just a second. Yeah, over 94 requests for the certificates, so therefore it's going to take time. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you very much once again to all our great speakers. Thank you for your participation, that you are with us. I hope you can hear me, and sorry for all that problems with the internet. Unfortunately, it might be connected with the situation here as well. So that's why.
Okay, so I should, tell the last words then. Okay, thank you so much for your talks and for the questions, and we wish to meet next month again. We're going to have our speakers on the same topic. Thank you so much again. See you in the next webinar. Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.